The psychology of hogfish, people don't often probably think about, why hogfish act kind of the way they do. They just kind of fish, start grinding through shrimp, go down, dive, spear their hogfish. But I believe hogfish act a certain way for good reasons. Hogfish tend to actually be very curious. They seem to like noise and like divers. They'll kind of swim up and swim sideways and kind of look at divers and with one side, and that gives a very easy shot. Divers that I've talked to said they often will find hogfish will come to them when they start spearing other fish. They hear the noise. They kind of want to inspect. Bigger hogfish tend to be a little aggressive. Maybe try to bully people off the reef. I've noticed my GoPro, when I send it to the bottom, if it hits the bottom, it might attract a school of hogfish from 10, 20, 50 feet away when it bangs around some rocks. For that, they're very curious fish. If they see schools of grunts, porgies, or whatever eating shrimp, they will hey, what's going on? It's kind of some of the things I've noticed when I'm recording GoPro video. If I see a school of fish, then the hogfish kind of will come in after the fact and see what's happening. And for something like this, maybe you want to chum off the back of the boat and then fish off the front of the boat. They kind of hang on the edge of the other fish eating, and you'll notice if a school of grunts is feeding heavily off the back of the boat, maybe the angler off the front of the boat's catching all the hogfish. Those grunts will stay together. They'll keep feeding in one spot. The hogfish kind of doing circles around the reef, and they'll find a shrimp from an angler in a different spot. Chumming for hogfish is not something I do. I've heard people do it, just because you get so many other species of fish around you. The chum that I've heard work, Tommy Butler once told me this when I was doing an article about hogfish. He's been doing it for a long time. Is he says he will cut the stomachs out of hogfish. Open hogfish's bellies, they tend to have a lot of shells. Maybe you'll find some crustaceans in there. He said that is what they're feeding. So if you're going to try to chum for hogfish, use what they've already eaten. Makes sense. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of work if you're not, going out fairly often. Chum's not necessary. You're just going to find yourself grinding through a lot more shrimp, other species. Hogfish in the winter months, that's their spawning time. FWC says they spawn from November through June. That's when, if you're catching female hogfish, you'll see the eggs. That's why it's a good time to release female hogfish. You're catching them in the middle of their spawn. They might be pregnant. You don't want to kill too many of their babies. The spawn means that when you're getting one hogfish, you're most likely going to be getting more than 4, 5, 6 in the same spot. They're grouping up in the winter months. That's when anglers are targeting them. And I've noticed the best fishing will be probably after about the second cold front of the year, when the water temps drop below 80 degrees, end of October, early November. The better the hog fishing gets, the colder. It seems to also drive more of them together. And it'll end in March, when cold fronts tend to stop. Water gets back up above 80, 75, 80. The hogfish will thin out. I'm sure you can still target them. That's just typically when we stop, because they start thinning out a little bit. Hogfish eat baits literally right on the bottom. This is where you need to be targeting them. You're not going to get them up in the water column. They're not going to be chasing down shrimp, crabs, anything like that. When you see a hogfish eating, they're rooting down on the bottom. That is why I've kind of developed a system that I think works best. Keep that bait right on the bottom. That's going to be your best shot for catching hogfish. Other things you need to consider: if you're getting aggressive grunts, maybe you want to throw some chum way off the back of the boat. Get the grunts away from you. Cut up some sardines, chuck them way off the back of the boat. Cut up, lizard fish if you're catching one, throw way off the back of the boat. Get the grunts as away from you as gag grouper. You'll end up catching a lot of gag grouper while you're hog fishing as well. The gags will be even more aggressive in the winter. They'll be on the same spots that you're getting hogfish a lot of the time. And one thing that anglers always say is you break off a gag grouper, you shut down the bite. You shut down the gag grouper bite. You're not necessarily going to shut down the hogfish bite. So if you're, getting a bunch of gags, let one or two take you in the rocks, break you off. You might shut down the gags, then the hogfish start biting. Just something to consider. If you're not getting as many hogfish as you think you should be, you're getting other species, maybe move away from the rocks, get out onto the sand a little bit. Get on the edges of the structure, and you'll find those hogfish making loops around the reef. Maybe you'll get a couple of them. You'll see when you do get one hogfish, you're typically going to get them in bunches. Some of the best hogfish days we've had where we get 20 plus fish, you're getting them all within an hour. It's one after the other after the other. The rest of the day you're struggling. You're thinking, man, where did they go? They're still down there, but for whatever reason, a lot of times you're just getting them in bunches. We've had plenty of days where we get 6 or 7, literally all at once. This was a day when we were struggling to get hogfish. We were getting a lot of other things, mangrove snapper. You can see lots of mangoes. It's a ledge in about 65 feet of water. Scamp grouper, grunts, some angelfish, which we don't typically catch. Those don't seem to eat anything we drop down. So here's a hogfish. We know they're down there. Do you want to fight through all these other fish? And we'll kind of watch what this hogfish does. So hogfish kind of out on the edges. You can see it's rooting right here. It's looking down into the bottom. Where's my food? And this is, a feeding hogfish. That's kind of what they do. It's looking down, nothing. So just kind of go back real quick. So nose, snout, down in the sand. That's how hogfish eat. All these other fish are being a little aggressive, beating them to the bait. But a snapper, it will eat fish off the bottom. It will eat bait off the bottom. A grunt will eat bait off the bottom. But they will easily, eat more baits, a foot off the bottom, 2 feet off the bottom. That's why keeping your bait down in the sand on the rocks is the way to go if you're trying to catch hogfish. But you can see, so here's how a hogfish typically will show up, bam, loud noise. Oh, look at that, hogfish right around the camera. Not saying make a ton of noise, but it doesn't hurt when you're getting hogfish. Problem with this spot, so many other species. That's why you're dealing with that. There's even an eel right there. I never even noticed that before. Oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. Eel. See if it goes back. So there's a hogfish. Lots of snapper, lots of grunt. How much do you want to cull through those other fish? It's up to you. And here's a couple little clips I want to show from other people's YouTube videos that I found, which just kind of reaffirm what I think from my own personal opinions. And it looks like this guy's fishing on a little bit of a ledge, kind of some hard bottom. There might be more rock piles and everything. So here's your hogfish. Here's the rig they're using. Kind of a goofy setup. It's a pompano jig, one of the banana jigs, goofy jig, whatever you want to call it. And there's a weight with it as well. You can see it's tips with shrimp. There's a shrimp on there. So there's a split shots. There's your pompano jig. Hogfish, definitely interested. And see that? Ate the shrimp. Pulled the bait away from it out of its mouth. So watch it real quick again. So it eats the shrimp. Here comes the jig. Shrimp fell off right there. And the hogfish gets kind of angry. Shrimp's on the bottom. Jig's got no bait. And hogfish gone. So what I think kind of happened here, obviously hogfish, hey, it's looking in the bottom. The biggest problem with this rig is the shrimp is taking up the entire jig. So when the hogfish goes to eat it, let me see if I can get right on that. So this shrimp is barely on the hook. If this was a piece of shrimp, I'm guessing the hogfish still would have eaten it, and they would have had a much better shot of actually getting the hook in its mouth. So as the hogfish bites it, it's curious, it bites just the head of the shrimp. So the hook is not in its mouth. It can't quite fit it. It's probably about a 12-inch female, 13-inch female, something like that. Doesn't quite get the whole hook in its mouth. So you can see just the head got bit off. Hogfish saying, man, well, this crazy looking shrimp. Hogfish off. So interesting rig, but eats it right on the bottom. One other thing people have been doing, which is very cool, is I think, they call it hog dogging. These guys are going underwater. This is from Headhunter Spearfishing. And basically dropping a knocker rig, very popular hogfish method, with a shrimp on it, and they're snorkeling, looking for the hogfish underwater. So find the hog, and this video also kind of confirms, how the hogfish are eating. So shrimp's on the bottom, knocker rig, hogfish goes to root it out of the sand. So he eats it, and see a hook in his mouth. Knocker rig, hook the hogfish. So that's the same thing, getting that bait right down on the bottom, giving yourself the best chance to catch hogfish. Finally, here's the last video I kind of want to show about hogfish, and it really showcases kind of what they do when they're on the bottom. This is from Rowdy Trouty. It's from a trip we took out, and I was fishing with a hog ball, and the hog ball got down to the bottom. And here's a big male hogfish. You can see it's looking down. It's kind of rooting. Looking, sees it. Goes to eat, and bam. Kind of misses the bait. Can't really see the jig until it comes up here in the water column a little bit. You can see there's the shrimp, there's the jig. So it was literally right down on the bottom. Hogfish looking at it. I probably set the hook a little too early, and it missed it. But the hogfish circles back around after getting spooked. Just kind of hangs out. Doesn't really go too far. Drop the jig back down. Hoping to get another bite. The shrimp was still on there. And Mr. Hogfish comes back to the same spot. So obviously it knows that there's something down there that it wants. But jig's gone, bait's gone. Hogfish finally gets a little spooked. Takes off. So what you kind of take away from this is hogfish behavior when they're eating. Literally right down on the bottom. So that's where you need your bait. Shrimp, crabs, fiddler crabs, mud crabs. I've heard people use quite a bit. Some other random things, oysters, maybe a gulp shrimp as well. So in the next video that I put up, I'm going to show people kind of how to rig to make sure you're fishing right on the bottom for hogfish. If you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, all that as well. Stay tuned. Thank you.